Hello, SargeSports Nation. This is Ethan Sargent, and this is a new experience for me. I am at my high school, and I am using some of the new equipment that I've got at my disposal, and I might be starting a podcast. Yeah, this is something that I've been looking to do for a while. It's really, it's new. I'm really excited to get used to this, and hopefully I can even bring people on and have some people talk about some sports with me. So, yeah, let's get right into things. Basically, I've kind of been gone for a while. I haven't really been able to use, Instagram. I've been just caught up and drowned in schoolwork, etc. So, now I think this could be a good way, maybe once a week or something like that, if I were to, come into here and just run a podcast, maybe 10, 15 minutes, and you guys would be willing to take the time to listen to what me and anybody else who comes on here wants to say. I think that'd be really cool. And I was just introduced to this maybe 5 minutes ago, and now, this is a new resource for me, and I think that I'm going to really like using this because it's going to further my understanding of how the industry works, and it's something I want to improve at and I want to get better at. So, I'm sorry about that. But yeah, it's definitely a new resource and a new tool that I can use, and it's going to be really helpful. So let's jump right into it. Basically, let's start off with Liverpool today. So we have had I'll go back about a couple weeks or so, since it's been a little bit of a while since I've really discussed the ins and outs of everything. So basically, Liverpool have some really important games that they've had and are going to have, and there's also some interesting things that's going on with the club right now. So I'm going to bring you guys up to date with all of that right now. So basically, in the past 2 weeks, we've had some interesting results. Going back to last week, we had a thrilling 5-5 draw against Arsenal in the Carabao Cup, which ended 5-4 to us on penalties. That was a thrilling game. We came back from 3-1 and 4-2 down to tie it in the 94th minute, and then we were able to win it on the penalty shootout. Curtis Jones with the winning penalty, and our youngsters showed their mentality just as our first team showed this past weekend against Aston Villa. We were down 1-0 until the 86th minute when Andrew Robertson scored a bullet header to tie the game up at 1, and then after that, we managed to sneak in a winner off a corner from Trent Alexander-Arnold, found the near post header of Sadio Mane, and he was able to put it in, and Liverpool were able to get out of Villa Park with in the end, very respectable 2-1 victory. Villa really, really gave it their all, and I think that, it was a really, really good game, and the fact that we were able to get those 3 points just, shows that we're champions, and we have the medal of champions, and we've shown it, and we've shown it time and time again already this season that maybe this is the year that we have what it takes to go all the way. We will see though, because obviously the huge clash coming up this weekend is the one against Manchester City. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with that in a couple of minutes, but firstly, let's talk about last night's result against Genk. It's 2-0, a 2-1 victory for the Reds. Relatively straightforward with a little bit of a rotated side. Liverpool were able to come out with a little bit of a rotated lineup with Divock Origi and Oxlade-Chamberlain and Naby Keita coming in, and Roberto Firmino and Sadio Mane not starting the game. Neither Andrew Robertson, he also did not start. So I think that, the fact that we were able to just really, for most of the game, we were able to just coast, and, we didn't have to go to that top gear that I know we have, but we were able to get the job done in the end in pretty easy fashion, even though the scoreline doesn't really demonstrate that. We were able to do a pretty good job to just get the job done, get the 3 points. We're now top of the Champions League group thanks to Napoli's 1-1 draw against Salzburg last night as well. So the next Champions League game is going to be at Anfield against Napoli, a rematch of that huge game last year. It's not as important this year, but this year we can guarantee qualification at the top of the group if we can get a result, or actually if we can win at home against Napoli. So let's go back to this huge Premier League game that we have this coming weekend. Liverpool versus Manchester City, and these are the games that you really look forward to as a fan, and you really look forward to as someone like me who loves to analyze these sorts of games. I think this is probably the most important Premier League game until April. These two teams, obviously Liverpool have built a 6-point cushion here early in the season. At one point it was even 8 points. But this is really an important game, and I think that for all the talk of it's only November, it's not going to mean that much. This game is huge, and this could be one of the games that decides the Premier League title. And and it's 6 points, but 6 points could become 3 with a City win. So, I really think that Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's given a really good case to start for Liverpool this coming week, and I think that he will really cause I really think he's going to give Jurgen Klopp a headache, because when it comes to these big games, Jurgen does have a set 3 of Fabinho, Gini Wijnaldum, and Jordan Henderson, who he likes to go with. He likes to go with those 3 in big games because he knows that he can get the defensive assurance from Fabinho, and then he's got Wijnaldum and Henderson who provide the grit, determination in midfield, and just they're always going to give it their all, and they usually find the right passes as well, and he knows that they have the quality up front to get the job done at that end. So I really think Oxlade-Chamberlain is giving a really, really tough decision to Jurgen Klopp, because he's been playing phenomenally recently. I think that he's really going to give. I think that he might start over Jordan Henderson or Gini Wijnaldum, just because he provides that attacking spark that I don't really think Gini or Hendo provides. I think that he's just got that attacking gear that might be the second level gear that we need against a team like City, who are down at the center back position. Aymeric Laporte is out until the new year with a knee injury, and they've had various other injuries at the center back position, which has forced Fernandinho to move from his traditional center defensive midfield role to center back, a position he's not necessarily comfortable in. They've also had to deal with the injury to Rodri, which is a big injury for them, their record signing. I think that for Liverpool to get the job done on Sunday, they got to play their game. We can't fall into the long ball trap. I think we got to keep possession of the ball. We got to dictate the pace of the game early. I think we've got to fashion opportunities for the wings. How we love to overload the sides with Alexander-Arnold and Robertson, on each side careening down. So, I think we got to whip balls into the box. I think one definite thing about City is that they're not the biggest side. If we can get set piece opportunities for the likes of Van Dijk, Lovren potentially, if he starts, that's the other issue. And then, Gomez potentially. We'll see who starts at center back between Lovren and Gomez. Gomez started last night. So we will see what happens. I think it's going to be a thrilling game for sure. And I really think that this is going to be a really, really, really fun game. And I think that is what's going to be hugely important, just for the Premier League as a whole here in America. It's probably the most popular league, and you got 2 of the most popular teams playing in the most important game of the season so far. So that's definitely hugely important. Gonna switch the focus off Liverpool here and head to the Cincinnati Bengals, who are worlds away from the heights that Liverpool are hitting. Basically, for the Bengals, it is literally the polar opposite of Liverpool. The Bengals are tanking, and it is pretty clear. So if we go back a while, we've just had utterly awful performance after utterly awful performance, and it just hasn't really gone well in all aspects of the game. The offensive line for the most part has been atrocious, and it's forced Andy Dalton into some awful decision making. Dalton himself hasn't been very well. He's made a lot of bad throws, and he's just made some really poor decisions. And, I think that's one of the main reasons why he is going to be sitting on the bench this coming weekend when the Ravens come to town, the 6-2 Ravens coming off a win against the Patriots. They're going to be coming to town red hot with Lamar Jackson playing at an almost MVP level, and they're going to be playing against Ryan Finley, the 4th-round draft pick out of North Carolina State. I really like Finley. I think that he's got an opportunity here, and I think that if he can take advantage, he could definitely make an impact on what the Bengals do in April, because I think that's what the Bengals are looking at right now, is that right now they're looking at draft position in April, because there are some good quarterbacks, and I'm gonna get more on who I think the Bengals should pick in April later. But for right now, let's just talk about this main decision to sit Andy Dalton and to bring Ryan Finley in as the starter. It's an interesting timing as well, because A.J. Green is coming back this week, finally, to make his season debut after these first 9 weeks dealing with a foot injury that he sustained on the first day of training camp. So, it's interesting because, Dalton and Green have been really good together. They've really had a really good connection, and I think that that's really interesting that they decided to sit Andy Dalton right when his main man comes back. So, I think that that's really important because, now it gives Ryan Finley an opportunity to show what he's got. He's got 8 games, and I think that's pretty much it. And it can either go horribly wrong or it could go great. And, there's ups and downs to both of those. Because if it goes wrong, who knows what happens with Dalton and Finley. And, I really don't want the Bengals to go 0-16 because, if you're 0-16, your name is written in history. Like, you're with the 08 Lions and you're with the 2017 Browns. I want to say, I hope I got that right. But yeah, you're just with those. Your name is always there as that team with a 0 in the win column, and that's just not something that you want. But the Bengals are going to have opportunities to win games in the second half of the season. They do have to play the Jets and the Dolphins, so those are 2 games that you'd expect the Bengals to win, and you maybe not expect the Bengals to win, but you definitely expect them to at the very least, give a fight. And and a lot of these losses, have been really close. You look at Week 1 in Seattle, where the Bengals were a point away from a team now in Seattle that looks like they're really good. So, that looked like a very respectable loss in Seattle. There was some really good play calling. John Ross had a phenomenal game. Andy Dalton looked good. The defense looked pretty solid. And, there was a lot of reason for optimism. But then they went home and got crushed by the now undefeated 49ers, which is, a little bit of a shock that the 49ers are undefeated. But, still getting beat that hard in Week 2 was just hurt and killed the momentum. Because then we went to Buffalo and lost another close game. And then since then, the season has just spiraled downhill. But yeah, the season has flown off the rails. And I think now I'll turn my focus to April because, since the season has gone so wrong so far, I think now the main focus of Bengals fans as 2019 draws to a close is just what's going to happen in April in 2020. And I think, it depends on how those games against the Jets and the Dolphins go because, if it would be typical for the Bengals to win those 2 games and then not get the number 1 or even the number 2 pick and potentially miss out on one of these elite quarterbacks. But for the purpose of this podcast, I think I'm just gonna assume that the Bengals are gonna have the number 1 pick, and I am a huge fan of Joe Burrow. I think he would be the man to go with, were the Bengals to have the number 1 pick. I just think the Burrow versus Tua debate is gonna go on long into April, and depending on which team is on the clock, heading into the playoffs, I think that. Let's say the Bengals do have the number 1 pick. I think that it would have to be Burrow. I just think Burrow's poise in the pocket is phenomenal. He has good receivers at LSU, but then again, the Bengals have good receivers too, and I think that's honestly forgotten sometimes. He has really good pocket presence. He's aware of what's going on. My main concern with Tua, Tua's a very, very good player, obviously. But, the injuries that he's sustained over the past couple of years, he's had that ankle problem that he has right now. And, he's got a couple other issues that, have just flared up a bit. So, we're going to see what happens with Tua. It's going to be interesting to see if he plays this weekend in Tuscaloosa against LSU. That's a huge game. I'm going to touch on college football a little bit more later. But, Yeah, I think that I think Joe Burrow would be the way to go. Were the Bengals to have the number one pick, and then there have been some arguments for Chase Young, and as much as Chase Young might be this this crazy good player, and I believe he is. I'm a Buckeyes fan, and I've seen Chase Young play, and he is phenomenal. But I think that I really think that Joe Burrow is just going to be the guy who changes the franchise. You have to think of it as you have to pick your guys. If you're picking, this is your pick for the next 10 years. If it goes right, it seems like as of right now, the Cardinals got it right with Kyler Murray. They're winning games. They have offensive output after having maybe the worst offense in the league. They had the worst offense in the league last year. Now you're getting fairly solid offensive output with the input of this quarterback. So, Kyler Murray's not Joe Burrow, not by a stretch, but I think Joe Burrow, really might be the the man to lead the Bengals into this new era. Because, I always thought from the beginning that Zach Taylor might want his own quarterback to, weld around and figure out on his own. So, we're going to see what happens with that. We're probably going to get walloped by the Ravens this weekend. I won't even get into that. But, yeah, let's get right into the next segment of this, which is going to be college football. I haven't really mentioned on my channel or really on my Instagram about how I'm a big Buckeye fan. I really have. That's from my dad. Really, a lot of these teams are from my dad, to be honest. But, I really think that, it is Buckeye season in our house. And, the Ohio State Buckeyes are pretty darn good. And it was evidenced in last night's college football playoff rankings where the Buckeyes came in at number 1. It came as a little bit of a surprise, honestly, to me. I thought that LSU was going to be number 1, and honestly, I'm going to make a case right now why LSU should be number 1, despite the fact that I'm a huge Buckeye fan. But yeah, let's go through the rest of the rankings real quick. So we'll go through the top 6. Ohio State is at 1, LSU is at 2, Alabama's at 3, Penn State's at 4, Clemson is at 5, and then Georgia is at 6. Oregon is at 7. Utah is at 8. And then Oklahoma is at 9. And Florida is at 10. So that is the top 10 of the college football playoff rankings. And there's a lot of interesting things to take from the first. The first rankings, everybody says, oh, don't worry about it. But, it usually is a good precursor for, who actually gets in. Because, in the past 2 years, an interesting statistic that I recently heard on ESPN is that the past 2 years, 3 of the 4 teams that were in the first ranking actually made it into the college football playoff. So, that's interesting, especially because, there are a lot of good teams, and there's an interesting couple teams on the bubble. Let's start with why I think that LSU should be ahead of Ohio State, and I think it's pretty simple, and I think it's just strength of record. I don't necessarily think that LSU is a better team than Ohio State. In fact, I think Ohio State's the best team in the country. But if we're looking at what the playoff, what exactly does the playoff committee want to see? And I think the reason that Ohio State is ahead of LSU right now is because of the strength of one win in particular. And I think it's the Ohio State win at Cincinnati. Or not at Cincinnati. The Buckeyes beating Cincinnati and beating Cincinnati dominantly. Cincinnati is ranked 20. An AAC team in the 20 spot is pretty solid. If this were the final rankings, Cincinnati would be in a New Year's Six bowl game. So, I think that that's really interesting because especially Texas has 3 losses already. So, when you look at Texas now, you look at that LSU win over Texas, which was a close win. You don't necessarily think of that as a huge, as a big win anymore, because that 3 losses for Texas. It's still a good win, but, I think the committee honestly might view that Cincinnati win as better than that Texas win. But, I think where Ohio State gains the edge is the eye test. I think that's pretty obvious. The Buckeyes have been walloping every opponent they come up against for the past few weeks, clobbering the likes of Wisconsin and Michigan State, while LSU, they have a good win against Florida, who are obviously the 10th ranked team, but they've got a huge game this weekend against Alabama, and I'm not going to go too in depth with the preview to that one, But, I think that's a big, big game because, just because of the magnitude of everything that is going on, because that's now a 2 versus 3. Crazy. And then Ohio State plays Penn State in 2 weeks. Ohio State's got Maryland this weekend, should win that game, but, it is a classic trap game at home against lesser opposition. You got to be aware you can't look past them to the Penn State game in a few weeks. You got to just get the business done this week. So, I think the other interesting thing is the Pac-12. They got 2 teams, both ahead of Oklahoma. Utah and Oregon. Both teams, loss. I think Oregon's loss is better than Utah's loss. Utah lost to USC. Oregon beat USC. Oregon's loss is number 11 Auburn, who have 2 losses, but, those 2 losses are to Florida and Florida. Why am I completely blanking on the other loss Auburn has? Florida and LSU. And, they think that, I think that Auburn still has a chance. They still got to play Georgia. They still have to play Alabama. So, I think that it's definitely going to be, really interesting because, I think the winner of the Pac-12 championship game, assuming that both teams win out, is going to be really interesting. So, last section of today's podcast is going to be the Yankees, whose season is unfortunately over, as is the rest of baseball. The Yankees went out in the ALCS to the Astros in 6. Jose Altuve with a walk-off home run on Aroldis Chapman, who they re-signed Aroldis Chapman, but they did not provide a qualifying offer to Didi Gregorius, which could potentially open the door for Didi to leave as a free agent. Not necessarily, though the Yankees could still re-sign him. And the Yankees will probably be pretty active in free agency. Some names like Garrett Cole have been mentioned, and we will see what happens there. So that is going to do it for the first ever Sarge Sports podcast. It has been a pleasure. I hope that you guys are able to see this somehow. I don't know how I'm going to get this out to you guys. Probably not through Instagram. I feel like I might make a YouTube channel where I just talk. And hopefully over the next couple weeks, I'll be able to talk some more about some more stuff, bring in some guests, and have some fun with you guys. So remember to follow Sarge Sports on Instagram if this is the first time you're seeing this. And thanks for watching, and have a great day.